successes. We must prepare for the challenges ahead. Our resolve will be tested. We need to secure the perimeter before nightfall. Our intelligence suggests enemy movement nearby.
We need to consider all options, sir. The stakes are too high to hesitate.
Gentlemen, the situation has escalated. We must coordinate our next moves with precision and urgency.
Stop. That was the order. One word crystal clear, coming directly from Supreme Allied Commander Dwight D. Eisenhower. Stop advancing. Halt your army. Wait for supplies. For once in this entire goddamn war, George, just follow orders. But George S. Patton didn't stop. He never stopped. And when Eisenhower discovered that his most brilliant and most insubordinate general had violated direct orders yet again, his reaction revealed everything about their impossible relationship. Today we're uncovering what Eisenhower actually said when Patton broke the one order he absolutely wasn't allowed to break. The conversation was explosive, the consequences were unexpected, and the truth behind this incident has been buried in classified documents for decades. This is the story of friendship, war, and what happens when genius refuses to obey. Late August 1944. Patton's Third Army was racing across France at a speed unprecedented in military history. In just 2 weeks, they'd liberated over 15,000 square miles of territory. They were approaching the German border faster than anyone thought possible. And then the supply lines collapsed. The problem was simple mathematics. Patton's tanks consumed fuel faster than the logistics system could deliver it. Every other Allied army faced the same shortage, but they obeyed orders to slow down. Montgomery's 21st Army Group halted for resupply. Bradley's other armies consolidated their positions. But not Patton. He kept pushing forward, scrounging fuel from wherever he could find it, including from other Allied units. On August 31st, Eisenhower had had enough. He sent Patton an unambiguous order through official channels. Halt Third Army advance at the Meuse River. Consolidate positions. Await supply deliveries before resuming operations. To make absolutely certain Patton understood, Eisenhower followed up with a personal phone call. The conversation, reconstructed from Eisenhower's diary and witness accounts, was blunt. George, this isn't a suggestion. This is a direct order from Supreme Headquarters. You will stop at the Meuse. You will not advance further until the supply situation is resolved. Am I completely clear? Patton's response was typical. Ike, we're so close to the German border. Give me the fuel that's going to Monty, and I'll be in Germany in 3 days. We can end this war by Christmas. Eisenhower's voice rose, unusual for the typically diplomatic commander. I don't care if you can reach Berlin by tomorrow. The order stands. Stop. At the Meuse. Do not make me repeat this again. Understood, Patton replied. But his tone suggested something else entirely. Eisenhower knew his old friend too well. After hanging up, he turned to his chief of staff, General Walter Bedell Smith, and said something prophetic. He's going to ignore this. I know George. He'll find some excuse, some tactical justification, and he'll keep going. I should relieve him of command right now, but we need him too much. Smith asked if Eisenhower wanted to place observers with Third Army to ensure compliance. Eisenhower considered it, then shook his head. If I have to assign babysitters to my army commanders, we've already lost. I have to trust that even George understands when an order is absolute. That trust was about to be spectacularly misplaced. Within 24 hours, Patton's reconnaissance units were crossing the Meuse, not just for scouting, but in force. Within 48 hours, entire divisions were across. Patton's justification? He claimed the order said to stop at the Meuse, not before it, so technically crossing it didn't violate the order. It was the kind of semantic gymnastics that would have gotten any other general court-martialed. When the reports reached Eisenhower's headquarters, his staff braced for an explosion. Patton had done exactly what Eisenhower predicted and feared. September 2nd, 1944. Eisenhower's morning intelligence briefing included a map update that made him pause. Third Army positions showed units well beyond the Meuse River. He asked his operations officer to confirm the map was correct. It was. Patton had not only crossed the Meuse, he was advancing toward the Moselle River, over 50 miles beyond where he'd been ordered to stop. Eisenhower's initial reaction wasn't anger, it was a weary recognition. His deputy, Air Chief Marshal Arthur Tedder, was present and later recorded Eisenhower's words. Of course he did. Of course George ignored the order. Why did I expect anything different? But as the details emerged, Eisenhower's frustration grew. Patton hadn't just bent the order slightly. He'd completely disregarded it. Third Army was conducting full-scale offensive operations, not reconnaissance. They were engaging German forces in significant battles. They were capturing territory and advancing the front line by dozens of miles per day. This wasn't a minor infraction. This was wholesale insubordination. Eisenhower immediately tried to call Patton directly. The connection was poor, constantly interrupted. Whether by genuine technical problems or by Patton's communications officers accidentally disconnecting the line remained unclear. When they finally connected, Patton's opening words were characteristically audacious. "Ike, great news. We're across the Moselle and advancing on Metz. The Germans are in full retreat. Give me the supplies, and we'll be in Frankfurt in a week." Eisenhower's response was cold with controlled fury. "George, I gave you a direct order to halt at the Meuse. You are currently 50 miles beyond the Meuse. Explain." Patton's explanation was a masterpiece of military double-talk. He claimed his reconnaissance units had found the bridges across the Meuse intact, presenting a tactical opportunity. To secure those bridges required crossing the river. Once across, they encountered minimal resistance, so it made tactical sense to continue advancing rather than retreat. By the time he could consult with SHAEF headquarters, his forces were already engaged beyond the Moselle. Would Eisenhower have preferred he order a retreat and surrender hard-won territory? It was classic Patton. Create facts on the ground that made it politically and militarily impossible to reverse his actions, then present himself as the victim of circumstances rather than the architect of insubordination. Eisenhower listened to the entire explanation in silence. His staff, listening on extensions, expected an immediate relief of command. Instead, Eisenhower's response was measured but devastating. "George, do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I don't know exactly what you're doing? You deliberately disobeyed a direct order, and now you're trying to justify it after the fact. This isn't the first time. It won't be the last, but we're going to have a conversation about this in person. You will report to my headquarters immediately." The line went silent. Patton, who always had a response, had nothing to say. He knew he'd pushed too far this time. September 3rd, 1944. Patton arrived at Eisenhower's headquarters in Chartres, France. Multiple witnesses documented what became one of the most significant command confrontations of the war. Patton entered Eisenhower's office expecting another lecture, perhaps a reprimand for his personnel file. What he got was something different. Eisenhower didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He spoke in the quiet, disappointed tone that was somehow worse than anger. "Sit down, George." Patton sat, uncharacteristically silent. Eisenhower continued. "Do you remember North Africa, when I saved your career after Kasserine Pass? Do you remember Sicily, when I saved your career again after you slapped those soldiers? Do you remember how many times I've protected you from politicians, from the press, from other commanders who wanted you court-martialed?" Patton started to respond, but Eisenhower cut him off with a raised hand. "I'm not finished. Every time, George, I defended you because you're a brilliant battlefield commander, because we need your tactical genius, because soldiers follow you and fight harder under your command than under anyone else's. I have accepted your theatrics, your ego, your difficult personality, all of it, because you win battles." Eisenhower stood and walked to the window, his back to Patton. "But what you did this time crosses a line. I gave you a direct order, not a suggestion, not guidance. A clear, unambiguous order, and you ignored it. Do you understand what that means for military discipline? If you can disobey orders whenever you disagree with them, then what's to stop every colonel, every major, every lieutenant from doing the same? You're not just defying me, you're undermining the entire command structure." Patton, never good with silence, finally spoke. "Ike, I had the Germans on the run. We had momentum. Stopping would have given them time to reorganize. I made a battlefield decision. No." Eisenhower's voice was sharp as he turned back to face Patton. "You made a deliberate choice to disobey orders because you thought you knew better. And maybe you did know better tactically. Maybe advancing was the right military move. But that's not the point. The point is that I'm the supreme commander, and if my orders can be ignored by subordinates who think they know better, then I'm not really in command at all." The room fell silent. Patton's face showed he finally understood the severity of the situation. This wasn't about tactics or strategy. It was about the fundamental principle of command authority. Eisenhower sat back down, his tone softening slightly. "George, you're my friend. You've been my friend for over 20 years, but I'm also your commanding officer, and you're putting me in an impossible position. I should relieve you right now. Every regulation, every precedent says that's what I should do. But if I relieve you, we lose our best operational commander. So I'm going to make you a promise. The next time, and there will be a next time, because I know you. The next time you disobey a direct order, I will relieve you, no matter what, no matter how valuable you are. Do you understand?" Patton met Eisenhower's eyes and, for once, gave a simple, honest answer. "Yes, sir, I understand." The confrontation between Eisenhower and Patton had immediate and lasting consequences. Eisenhower followed up their meeting with an official written reprimand that went into Patton's personnel file. More significantly, he imposed real operational constraints. Third Army's supply allocation was cut to force compliance. Patton could only advance as far as his allocated supplies would take him. No more scrounging from other units. For about 2 weeks, Patton actually followed orders. His army consolidated positions along the Moselle, conducted limited operations, and waited for the supply situation to improve. His staff officers were shocked. Some thought Eisenhower had finally broken Patton's stubborn independence. They were wrong. What Patton had actually learned wasn't obedience. It was subtlety. Instead of openly defying orders, he began finding creative interpretations. When told to conduct limited probing attacks, he launched reinforced battalion-sized operations that were essentially small-scale offensives. When ordered to maintain defensive positions, he positioned his forces so aggressively forward that they were practically inviting German counterattacks, which he then used as justification for counterattacks. Eisenhower's staff noticed these semantic games but found them harder to punish than outright disobedience. As Eisenhower told General Bradley, "George has learned to color within the lines. He just keeps redefining where the lines are." The broader impact on Eisenhower's command was significant. Other generals noticed that Patton had violated direct orders and, while reprimanded, remained in command. Some took this as license for their own initiatives. Eisenhower had to issue clarifying directives that Patton's tactical success did not excuse his insubordination, and that other commanders should not view his retention as precedent. Privately, Eisenhower expressed his frustration to his naval aide, Harry Butcher, who recorded it in his diary. "Managing George is like trying to control a force of nature. You can't stop him. You can only hope to channel him in useful directions. I've learned that giving him absolute orders just means he'll find creative ways around them. Better to give him objectives and let him figure out how to achieve them, even if his methods give me ulcers." The incident also affected the Eisenhower-Patton friendship. Their relationship remained professional and even warm, but a distance had emerged. Eisenhower could no longer fully trust Patton to follow orders, and Patton resented being constrained by what he saw as excessive caution. They remained friends, but the friendship had been tested in ways that left permanent marks. Most tellingly, Eisenhower never gave Patton another unequivocal stop order for the rest of the war. He'd learned that such orders were either ignored or creatively reinterpreted, so he adjusted his command style to work with Patton's nature rather than against it. Decades after the war, when both men had passed, historians gained access to the complete documentation of this incident. What emerged was a more complex picture than the simple narrative of insubordinate general versus frustrated commander. Eisenhower's post-war writings reveal his conflicted feelings about the entire affair. In his memoir, Crusade in Europe, he addressed the incident obliquely. General Patton's aggressive spirit occasionally led to differences of opinion on operational timing. Balancing his remarkable offensive capabilities against the requirements of coalition warfare and logistics coordination remained one of my most persistent challenges. Reading between the lines, it's clear Eisenhower never fully resolved his feelings about how to handle Patton. In his private papers, released years after his death, Eisenhower was more candid. In a 1952 letter to General Bradley, he wrote, "I've thought often about that September meeting with George. Should I have relieved him? Probably. Would the war effort have suffered? Certainly. Was there a better way to handle the situation? I still don't know. George was unique, brilliant, and impossible in equal measure. History will judge whether I was too lenient or whether I made the pragmatic choice that helped win the war faster." Military historians remain divided. Some argue Eisenhower's failure to relieve Patton established a dangerous precedent that subordinate commanders could disobey orders if they achieved results. The counter-argument is that Eisenhower correctly recognized that different commanders require different management styles, and that rigidly applying regulations would have sacrificed operational effectiveness for procedural correctness. What's undeniable is that Patton's violation of the halt order and Eisenhower's handling of it revealed fundamental tensions in military command. Should brilliant but difficult subordinates be held to the same standards as average performers? Does tactical success excuse insubordination? How much authority should field commanders have to interpret orders based on battlefield conditions? These questions remain relevant in modern military doctrine. The incident is studied at command colleges as a case study in both leadership and insubordination. Students debate whether Eisenhower made the right choice, with passionate arguments on both sides. Perhaps the most revealing perspective comes from General Omar Bradley, who knew both men intimately. In his memoir, A General's Life, Bradley wrote, "Ike and George were both right and both wrong. George was right that advancing would have achieved better tactical results. Ike was right that military discipline requires following orders even when you disagree. Their confrontation exposed the impossible position both were in. George couldn't stop being George, and Ike couldn't stop being responsible for maintaining command authority. The solution they found, mutual frustration and grudging accommodation, wasn't elegant, but it won the war. In the end, Patton never broke that particular order again. Not because he'd learned obedience, but because Eisenhower never again gave him an order that absolute. They'd both learned something from the experience. Patton learned where Eisenhower's absolute limit was, and Eisenhower learned that trying to completely control Patton was counterproductive. Their relationship evolved from commander-subordinate to something more like partnership, a partnership where both men understood the boundaries, even if they didn't always like them. The final word, perhaps, belongs to Eisenhower himself. Years after the war, when asked about managing difficult subordinates, he said, "Some men you command, some men you lead, and some men, very few men, you simply aim in the right direction and hope they don't cause too much collateral damage on the way to winning." George Patton was the latter. If this look inside one of World War II's most explosive command relationships fascinated you, then you need to subscribe to this channel right now. We're bringing you the untold conversations, the classified confrontations, and the personal conflicts that shaped history's greatest war. Hit that notification bell because we've got more incredible content coming about Eisenhower, Patton, and the other personalities who won the war despite, or sometimes because of, their conflicts with each other. Drop a comment telling us which military relationship or rivalry you want us to explore next. Eisenhower and Montgomery, Patton and Bradley, MacArthur and absolutely everyone. Your suggestions drive our content. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the impossible relationship between genius and authority, smash that like button and share this video with anyone who appreciates the complicated truth behind military history. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the greatest leaders are the ones who know when to break the rules, and the ones who know when to forgive those who break them. See you next time.